on a health side, there's something going on with you physically, you have to be your own biggest advocate. Don't just say, take the doctor's word for it. Don't just let the doctor say, oh, it's this pill that can treat whatever symptom you're experiencing. Really try and push to understand what is the root cause of what is going on. So I was able to uncover something that was happening for me physically that I was not aware of that could be extremely detrimental to my livelihood had it just gone on treating symptoms rather than focusing on what is the root cause. Hi, this Therapist Has Problems podcast. Hi, this is Natasha with the This Therapist Has Problems podcast. Welcome back. It has been a hot minute. How are you guys doing? How are you feeling? What's been going on in your world? To say that life has been a whirlwind since I dropped the first episode of this podcast is a major understatement. In my first episode, if you had not watched it yet, please go and watch it. I mentioned that this podcast had been placed on my heart back in 2020, and things just kept happening where I just wasn't able to get started. I would record a couple episodes, life would happen, I would have to scrap the episode, and so on and so forth. Since about 2022 is when I first started seriously recording this podcast. And just like the pattern has continued, I dropped the first episode, super excited, great reception. Thank you so much for everyone who has watched it so far. And then just lifed hard. So I struggled and debated on if I wanted to talk about this, how much I wanted to share. I do think it is important to acknowledge that when we make plans, sometimes life happens and it interjects and it throws things off track, and really understanding how do you bounce back when life happens. So what has been going on with me? And I think it's significant to talk about because I know there are other people out here dealing with some similar things that I was going through. So let's talk about it. So I dropped the podcast my birthday month in September, and maybe a couple weeks after I dropped the podcast, no, maybe the week that I dropped the podcast, my assistant for my private practice reached out to me and said my business was growing too rapidly. She wasn't able to keep up with the pace. Completely understood. So she needed to step away because it was becoming overwhelming for her. So I immediately had to source and find another assistant. She was also not only managing my client side of things, but also managing my social media. So if you notice, nothing has been posted on my social media since October. It's because I'm still looking for someone to help me manage that. But that happened September. She ended in October. And so I had to absorb some of that, take that on. And then in the midst of things kind of changing for me professionally, things were changing for me personally as well. And I want to be transparent with this because I understand, like I said, there are other people that may be going through similar things. I have been dealing with issues with my health for a while, and I started noticing some changes with my body, and I was working with my primary care doctor, and I was like, something is going on. I don't know what's happening. The doctor just threw a medication at it, and I had been taking this medication for a year or two, and it was treating the issue, which I'll say I was experiencing swelling in my feet and in my legs. And I'm like, I know I sit down all day for work, but something else is going on. Why is this happening? So she gave me a blood pressure medication to try and help with the swelling. It was a water pill. And then I'm like, I'm taking this medication, but what is the root cause of this issue? What is going on that's causing me to experience this swelling? So they thought it was something autoimmune. So I have gone to so many different doctors. I've gone to my primary care doctor, kidney doctor, rheumatologist, hematologist, all the ologists. And I've had so many tests run. I've had scans and I've even had a biopsy done. No answers as far as what is causing the root issue. So in this process of navigating through adjustments with my business, excited to launch this podcast. Life was happening. So I'm navigating through these unexpected changes, and it was extremely stressful. So, my first point to you is on a health side, there is something going on with you physically. You have to be your own biggest advocate. Don't just say, take the doctor's word for it. Don't just let the doctor say, oh, it's this pill that can treat whatever symptom you're experiencing. Really try and push to understand what is the root cause of what is going on. So I was able to uncover something that was happening for me physically that I was not aware of that could be extremely detrimental to my livelihood had it just gone on treating symptoms rather than focusing on what is the root cause. Now, in finding this issue, there is still no explanation as to why this issue is occurring, but I am determined that I'm going to continue to push for answers to understand what is happening and why, because not only am I fighting for my own life and livelihood, but I want to be here and present for my children as well. So, first thing, advocate for yourself. Ask questions, do your own research. That is super important. One thing, and also going through these different changes, and I have notes to make sure I stay on track. I was really excited to get started with this podcast. And I already have 3 or 4 episodes already recorded, had them laid out. But because things stopped on the business side for me with my social media, and to be honest, mentally, emotionally, physically, I was not in a place to push myself to say, oh, I'll just take on my social media. I'll get to creating posts and push it out and be excited. Because personally, I was going through a lot. So the second thing, other than focusing on your health, is taking a pause in life does not equal failure. So I am super hard on myself. If I set a goal, I want to accomplish that goal, but I have to understand and accommodate for unexpected things happening in life. And I did for a moment start to get down on myself. Oh, here I go again. I was so excited about the podcast and now I can't promote it or post it like I want. But life was really happening and I had to take a pause to take care of myself. I had to be the person that I try and teach my clients to be. Prioritize yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're filling your own cup before trying to fill others. So I had to take a pause. Acknowledge that it was not a failure. It was just a pause. And I had to allow myself space to process through my own emotions. So made sure I was staying on top of going to therapy. I am a therapist who has a therapist, and I believe that all therapists should have a therapist, but I made sure I was touching base and checking in with my therapist to process through what I was feeling and experiencing. I made sure that I was open with my support system and was able to process through my feelings there. So I wasn't just holding this inside as far as what I was going through physically. So give yourself space, even though your plans may be derailed, even though you got to put some things on pause, rearrange, readjust. Take that time to truly acknowledge what you're feeling in the moment so you're not just holding it in, which only prolongs holding on to these feelings even longer. So for me, I can identify having fear, feeling stressed, feeling worried, feeling concerned as far as what does my mortality look like if this is as serious as they may be projecting it to be. So it was heavy. And there was no way that I could show up in the way that was the most effective unless I was very intentional about taking a pause to talk through honestly what I was feeling and thinking. So I want to encourage you to do that. Another thing, leaning on my support system. I am so grateful for the people that God has put in my life as my support. I believe that I have struggled throughout my life with identifying safe people that I can honestly be open with and transparent with, to cry with, have questions with, be angry with. And I am really grateful for those key people in my life, and they know exactly who they are, who really stood next to me and held me up literally and figuratively through this whole process. So for you, It's saying, who is your support people? Who are those people who are in your corner? And I know being the strong one, we often are the ones who are the support people, but identify those people who are in your life who are willing, able, and capable of showing up for you, especially if you're going through life changes where you can't figure it out on your own. So utilizing your support system is extremely important. And then I was going through some rough things, but not everything was all bad. So when I initially got my license to be a licensed professional counselor, I knew that I wanted to be a licensed supervisor. So in the midst of everything that I was doing, I felt like things were off track with my business. I decided to revamp some things business-wise. I went ahead and I took the course to be certified as a supervisor. So in the midst of all this stuff going on, I was able to accomplish a goal that I am extremely proud of. It was not easy, but I'm extremely proud that I did not completely shut down everything. I was able to pull back from some things that would have pulled too much energy from me, but also focusing on things that were within my control. So the point of that, sharing that, is life happens, right? Life can happen and throws curveballs at you. But just because things are rough, just because things are bad, just because things are unexpected are happening, doesn't mean everything around you is bad. So learn to, in the midst of a storm, to celebrate the wins. Sometimes it is accomplishing a goal. Sometimes it's, I got out of bed this morning. Sometimes it's, you know what, I showed up for work every day this week. Even though I feel like crap, I was able to push myself. I was able to show up. So whatever your wins are in the midst of the storm, challenge yourself to show up and celebrate those wins. Let's see, moving forward. I still don't have any answers when it comes to my health. And I'm laughing because that can be something that I sit in and I soak in and I worry about consistently. But the most positive piece of going through this health journey that I've recognized is the more that I know. So I've gone through all these tests, all the blood work, different procedures, different scans, MRI, PET scan, you name it. And it can feel, on one hand, frustrating for these tests to come back and they're like, no, everything's clear, everything looks good, no answers. And I could allow myself to feel frustrated and stressed because I still don't know anything, but I choose to look at the positive to say, at least I know what it's not. Right? So in moving forward in my life, there still will be some other tests and procedures that I need to go through to get a definitive answer. But the closer that I'm getting, the more that I'm ruling out, and that gives me peace. So for you, if you're going through a storm, you're not going to have all the answers. So work with what you know. And sometimes it may not be celebrating what it is or understanding what it is, but acknowledging, I know what this is not. I know that I'm not a failure. I know that life is not over. I know that I have an opportunity another day to work on things, to get things right, to figure out an answer. So don't give up on yourself in the midst of lifing. Another thing, so knowing when it's time to give yourself a break, knowing when it's time to acknowledge what you know, and sometimes it's letting go of what you don't while you're in the process of finding an answer. Now I feel like I'm on the other side of this journey. Even though I don't have answers, I still consider it to be on the other side where I'm like, you know what? It's time. I've given myself a break. I've allowed myself to process. Now it's time to pick up some things. Now it's time to refocus, regroup on what is important for me and what gives me joy. So in this process, I think the most important thing that I've experienced is shedding things that I don't want. So in revamping my business, I had contractors before. I decided that I don't really enjoy that aspect of my business. So yes, is it a financial change to not have that anymore? It definitely is. But in realizing and looking at life and saying, I have a finite time on this earth. I want to do things that I feel like I'm passionate about, that bring me joy. How do I pivot to get closer to that goal? So sometimes it is life shakes you up and it's like, all right, what am I doing that is really pouring into me? And I'm not only focused on what I have to do. I know we all have bills, we all have work, there's a lot of things that we have to do. But sometimes it's reassessing to say, how can you get closer your have to align with what you want? So, gave myself time to refocus, revamp, use this challenge of life as really an opportunity to reassess what I want my life to look like going forward. And the main thing that I came up with is I can't give up on myself. I can't sit and sulk. I can't sit in sadness, depression, confusion, fear. I can acknowledge it. I can allow myself to feel it, but I'm not going to sit in it. And there's a significant difference to say, I can allow myself to cry some days. I can allow myself to say, I'm exhausted. I just want to rest some days. But I'm not going to let that be my everyday. So that is extremely important. I'm all about processing where you are, processing your feelings and emotions. But then it's saying, what do I want to do about it? That's what your responsibility is, to feel it, experience it, but then come out on the other side with a plan on how you want to handle it and deal with it going forward. So don't ever give up on yourself, especially in the midst of the difficult and hard times. Use it as an opportunity to reassess where you are and make a choice for yourself on what you want things to look like for you going forward. The last thing I'll say, you are responsible and in control of setting the tempo of how you want to deal with life on life's terms. Again, we have zero control of what life will do. There's a lot of outside factors that we face and experience every single day that we have no control over. What we have control over is how we deal with life when it happens. So I want to challenge you, if you're going through different things, to really take a pause, feel your feelings, allow yourself to process through, reassess where you are, reassess what you want for yourself, then create a plan on how you want to face it going forward, and then get up and do the plan. So that is my quick life update as I re-enter into this zone of This Therapist Has Problems podcast. Because guess what? This therapist be having problems. But I hope that I am an example of how to navigate through problems and not get stuck in them. That is the whole goal of this podcast. I'm a real life person. Yes, I'm a therapist. I was still being the therapist through the midst of everything that I was dealing with personally. But I want to be an example that, yes, you can go through hard things, but going through hard things means you're not stuck in the midst of it. So, hope you were able to gather something from that. I am really excited to continue to launch episodes of This Therapist Has Problems podcast. I'm plugging this in the middle of some already pre-recorded episodes. So the next one that I post, you may see me with my braces because I recorded that a while back, but it's still extremely relevant. So I'm still going to use those episodes until I get caught up. But I did want to jump in and just give you an update on why I dropped an episode and disappeared for forever. So I am glad and happy to come back. I'm glad and happy to have this space. And one thing I want to say, I am so grateful for each and every healthcare professional that I have encountered along this journey. It is extremely stressful to have things happen in your body and you have no idea what is going on. And the people that you encounter along the way of finding answers is so pivotal in what this journey looks like. So if you are a healthcare professional, thank you for the things that you do to care and support and take care of other people. Your job is super important, and the way that you show up to those jobs makes a huge difference. So thank you to every person that has helped me. I have had amazing experience with every doctor, nurse, tech, clinician. I've really been blessed to have really great experiences. So thank you for everyone who is in the healthcare field. Listen, like Tabitha Brown say, if you're having a bad day, please don't put that on other people. People are going through a lot, so show up in the best way that you can. And if you can't, rewind this podcast and start from the top. Maybe it's time for you to take a minute to take a step back. process, get through what you're dealing with so that you can show up as your best self. So that's all I got. I am really happy to be back. I love doing this podcast. So there will be more episodes posted soon. I think that's all I got. Thank you so much for being here. Drop down below if you're dealing with anything, if you need help building a support system. Please let's utilize each other for support. Thank you for watching this Therapist Has Problems podcast. M.B.S. Health is glad to support you in any of your mental health needs, and I will see you next time. Bye.